Welcome to News Beacon, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. In a move that sent shockwaves through the global economy, the BRICS bloc stunned the world by slapping a 100% tariff on a vast range of U.S. goods, an action that few had seen coming, and even fewer were prepared to handle. The announcement triggered an immediate economic shockwave, rippling through financial markets, rattling politicians, and leaving everyday Americans anxious about what would come next. News of the tariff sent stock futures tumbling overnight, wiping out billions in value within hours. Analysts scrambled to assess the fallout, with many warning that the repercussions could be felt for months, if not years, to come. The sweeping tariff list targeted the very core of American exports, from the heartland soybeans and agricultural products to high-tech manufacturing in Silicon Valley, and even energy shipments leaving U.S. ports. Almost overnight, the move doubled the price of U.S. products in key global markets. Shelves that once carried American brands began to empty, and shoppers abroad were stunned by the sudden spike in prices, a scenario few had truly anticipated or planned for. This wasn't just another trade spat, it was a coordinated strategic challenge to U.S. economic dominance by a united front representing a massive share of global GDP. The world was witnessing a new era of economic rivalry. Suddenly, trade policy was no longer an abstract debate in Washington. It became a real and present threat to jobs, prices, and America's place in the world. Factory workers, business owners, and families all felt the pressure. Lawmakers faced a deluge of calls from industry leaders, workers, and constituents demanding answers and urgent action. The pressure on Capitol Hill was palpable, as protests and emergency meetings erupted across the country. The White House, which had previously championed tariffs as a tool of leverage, now found itself facing a powerful countermove, one that threatened to undermine its own economic strategy and global standing. The BRICS tariff wall marked a dramatic turning point, forcing the U.S. to reckon with the global forces it once shaped. The world was changing, and America's response would shape the next chapter of international trade and power. To truly grasp the impact of the new tariffs, it's essential to understand who the BRICS are and why their actions matter on the world stage. The alliance began with Brazil, Russia, India, and China, four rapidly growing economies with global ambitions. In 2010, South Africa joined, expanding the group's reach to Africa. Fast forward to 2024 and BRICS has welcomed Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Iran, Egypt, and Ethiopia, making it a truly global coalition that spans multiple continents and cultures. This dramatic expansion has transformed BRICS into an economic powerhouse. Together, these nations now account for nearly 40% of global GDP, and they command a significant share of world trade, investment, and resources. Their combined influence is felt in everything from energy markets to technology and finance. What makes BRICS unique is its diversity. The bloc brings together democracies and authoritarian states, oil-rich nations and technology hubs, all united by a common goal: to create a multipolar world and reduce their reliance on the US dollar and Western-dominated institutions. Their new development bank, along with alternative financial systems, is a direct challenge to the dominance of the IMF and World Bank, offering new options for global development and investment. The inclusion of major oil producers like Saudi Arabia and Iran gives BRICS leverage that extends far beyond trade in manufactured goods, allowing them to influence global energy prices and supply chains. By inviting new members such as Nigeria and Vietnam, BRICS is building a vast network that could rival the established economic order, drawing in emerging economies from every region. Their recent tariff move isn't just about trade policy, it's a bold declaration that they intend to reshape the rules of the global economy, asserting their collective interests on the world stage. As BRICS flexes its newfound collective muscle, the world is watching closely, aware that the balance of economic power may be shifting before our eyes. The BRICS tariff wasn't random. It was a direct response to escalating U.S. threats. Months of aggressive American tariffs and warnings, especially against BRICS's plans for a new currency, set the stage. President Trump's administration threatened 100% tariffs if BRICS challenged the dollar, then upped the ante with more threats in July 2025. BRICS saw these as ultimatums, not negotiations. At a Rio summit, BRICS leaders condemned U.S. pressure, insisting on their right to economic independence. their unified response, a 100% tariff, framed as self-defense against American economic aggression. BRICS leaders said they weren't anti-US, but couldn't ignore threats to their sovereignty. The US set an August deadline for new deals. When it passed, BRICS struck back decisively. The tariff was a message. BRICS would not be bullied into submission. The BRICS tariffs struck at the very core of the US economy, targeting agriculture, technology, automobiles, and even the iconic California wine industry. These sectors, long considered pillars of American prosperity and innovation, suddenly found themselves on the front lines of a global trade war. American farmers, once dominant exporters of soybeans and corn, suddenly found their products priced out of key markets. For decades, these crops had fed the world and fueled rural economies. But overnight, demand from BRICS nations evaporated. Billions in sales vanished overnight, threatening the livelihoods of farming families across the Midwest. Generations of hard work and investment were put at risk, as empty silos and idle equipment became a new, grim reality. Tech companies faced a new reality. Products like microchips, smartphones, and advanced electronics became unaffordable in BRICS countries, slashing revenue and fueling local competition abroad. American innovation, once a global standard, now faced barriers that threatened its dominance. US automakers who had been making inroads in Brazil, India, and the Middle East saw their cars instantly become twice as expensive as rivals. Years of building brand loyalty and market share were wiped out in a matter of weeks. Export orders collapsed, putting factory jobs and supply chains at risk. The ripple effects spread quickly, threatening not just assembly lines but also the countless small businesses that support them. Even California winemakers, who had built a $2 billion export market in BRICS nations, faced catastrophic losses. Decades of cultivating relationships and reputations abroad were undone almost overnight. Years of investment and market building were undone in a single stroke. The infrastructure that once powered American exports now stood idle, a stark reminder of how quickly fortunes can change. The tariffs didn't just threaten profits, they jeopardized entire communities. Small towns dependent on exports faced shrinking tax bases, school closures, and a growing sense of uncertainty about the future. Industry leaders warned of layoffs, plant closures, and a long-term loss of global competitiveness. The fear was not just about immediate losses, but about whether America could maintain its leadership in the world economy. The message was clear: the BRICS move was an existential threat to key American industries. The sense of crisis was palpable, as business leaders and workers alike wondered what the future would hold. The pain was immediate and the long-term damage could be even greater. For many, the fear was that these wounds might never fully heal, leaving scars on the American economic landscape. The US now faced a stark choice: adapt, retaliate, or negotiate. Each path carried risks, and the world was watching to see how America would respond to this unprecedented challenge. The stakes had never been higher for American business. The outcome of this crisis would shape not just the economy, but the nation's place in the world for years to come. The market reaction was instant and brutal. Major indices plunged, erasing billions in value. Companies with global exposure, especially in agriculture, tech, and manufacturing, saw their stocks hammered. The verdict from Wall Street: this trade war would hurt, and hurt badly. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce warned of tens of thousands of job losses. CEOs predicted layoffs and plant closures if access to BRICS markets wasn't restored. Supply chains built over decades were suddenly in jeopardy. On factory floors and farms, workers feared for their paychecks and futures. Industry leaders called for urgent de-escalation, warning that the tariffs were an existential threat. The economic landscape was suddenly one of fear, uncertainty, and looming crisis. In Washington, the BRICS tariffs sparked fierce political debate. The White House doubled down, calling the tariffs an attack on U.S. sovereignty and vowing to stand firm. Critics in Congress blasted the administration's trade policy as reckless, pointing to market chaos and industry warnings. The public was divided. Some demanded relief, others backed the tough stance. Federal agencies scrambled to assess the damage and consider aid for affected industries. Finding alternative markets proved nearly impossible given BRICS' size. The government was in crisis mode, caught between its own hardline policy and the economic fallout. The tariffs are just one part of BRICS' larger plan to challenge the US-led world order. Their long-term goal: reduce reliance on the dollar, and build a parallel financial system. China and Russia have pushed for trade in their own currencies, while the New Development Bank offers alternatives to the IMF and World Bank. By adding oil giants like Saudi Arabia, BRICS gains leverage over global energy markets, potentially undermining the dollar's dominance. The expansion isn't just about size, it's about building a coalition for a multipolar world. This trade fight is a battle over who sets the rules of the global economy. BRICS is signaling it won't be deterred from its path to greater economic sovereignty. The tariffs are a tool in a much bigger game to reshape global finance and power. The world is witnessing a fundamental shift in economic dynamics. The US-BRICS trade war threatens to fracture the global trading system. Allies like Japan and Germany are caught in the crossfire, pressured to pick sides. The World Trade Organization and IMF warn of a global recession if the dispute spirals. Institutions designed to ensure stability are sidelined as the world's biggest economies go head-to-head. The risk, a divided world, with rival economic blocs and fractured supply chains. Globalization's era of open markets could give way to protectionism and mistrust. The outcome will shape the future of international cooperation or rivalry. As the dust settles, experts warn that a prolonged trade war would be disastrous for all sides. US GDP would shrink, jobs would vanish, and inflation would rise. BRICS economies would also suffer from lost trade and investment. Diplomacy is the only real path to de-escalation, but deep mistrust makes compromise difficult. Without a deal, both sides may dig in, building rival economic systems and fragmenting the world economy. The stakes are enormous: higher costs, lower growth, and greater instability for everyone. Policymakers must act fast to prevent further escalation and restore stability. The crisis is a stark reminder. In a connected world, trade wars are easy to start but nearly impossible to win. The choices made now will determine if this is a brief crisis or the dawn of a new era of global rivalry. The world holds its breath, waiting to see what comes next.